So I got all this power now. What do I do with it? Hey everyone, it's Graham Street. You're joining me here on my YouTube channel or cyclo-core.com. I know it's been a couple months since my last video. As you can plainly hear, I'm a little bit under the weather. I've been battling an upper respiratory chest infection like I normally do this time of year. Haven't been able to get outside very much. Have gotten out for almost 100 miles this week though, so things are looking brighter. Today what I'm going to be doing is answering some long overdue questions, important questions from you, my listener and reader and customer, concerning something that's really important, especially as we approach springtime or really any time of year where we want to differentiate gains in power and strength, and more importantly, how to diversify and segment that strength to your advantage. We live in a world now, and I've always been concerned about this, where we as cyclists have become overly duped and concerned with our pragmatic and empirical numbers on an indoor trainer or a machine or trainer road, or here's where my functional threshold power is during an 8-minute test or 10-minute test, and this defines me and my hard work as a cyclist. And I'm going to hopefully prove to you that although using power and things like heart rate are great tools, they don't tell the whole story and they don't predict the future on how well you can ride a bike. This question comes from Ben. You have to excuse me again. I'm doing the best I can with speaking, but I'm battling myself here. This question comes from Ben from Spokane, Washington, and it's a really important question, especially for you racers, want to be racers, and people that do a lot of competitive group rides or just want higher end performance. Ben writes in, Graham, I'm nearing completion of your Cyclo-90 Masters program, so he's on the more advanced kind of version. All went well. FTP went from 240 to just over 280 in the past 10 weeks, which is about a 40 watt gain in functional threshold power, which is great. But I'm planning on several different circuit races, local time trials in my area, and possibly a longer road race at the end of the year. How do I set up my in-season for those goals, and how do I continue to progress my power? Okay, so Ben, since you use the Masters program, I know that you've done a little bit longer FTP protocol. See, for many of you that are just beginning with me, I give you that basically that repeatability of 8-minute tests, the 8-minute FTP protocol. If you haven't done that yet, you can go to cyclo-core.com. You can do it for free. I have it available for everyone on the protocol. I'll coach you through it myself. I think I may actually even wearing the same shirt, so excuse me. That was years ago. I love this shirt. Anyway, that 8-minute test is basically just a snapshot of your overall efficiency on a bike. It is by no means a true functional threshold power test. It's what we call an approximate. It's a quick, fast, easy way to help you get a gauge of your threshold power and proficiency. But it doesn't define you. It gives you a starting place. Ben, however, is following my master's program. So Ben has done a 25-minute, and more importantly, what I call a variable rate or a threshold rotation workout. So in my master's protocol, I know I've got hundreds and thousands of you that are using masters right now. The hit session number 5, the threshold rotation master, is a different type of threshold workout because I changed the rate of the workout all the way through the 25 minutes. So it's a much better approximate and appraisal of your threshold fitness. So to go from 240 to 280 on that test, which is what I'm assuming you did, Ben, is great. Now that we've got the power established, and I want to make a side note here, if you are jumping into my training or you feel like you're behind in your fitness, regardless of time of year, regardless of how old you are never too late to go back to Cyclo-90 Base or Cyclo-90 Masters and establish your fundamentals. Your fundamental base of building power is everything. Because it's like building a house. If I'm going to build a house, I don't just start stacking wood up and building, framework. I have to build the foundation first. And no matter what house you build, whether it's a shack or a $50 million mansion, the foundation is the first thing and the most important thing to still get done no matter what. And during the off season or during the base phase, again, regardless of time of year, that establishment of base is important. Once that base is established, then we can diversify and segment that power based on your individual needs. So Ben asks here, how do I continue to progress my power in the in-season? Well, I've got my Cyclo-90 in-season protocol, and it's hard as hell. It really is. It's not easy. I designed it to push what was already working good to the next level. And of course, to do that, I have to push you a little bit further. That doesn't mean I need necessarily more work from you. I just need even higher quality work from you. The agenda of the Cycle 90 in-season protocol, I know many of you have used it for years past, myself included, is not to continually try to press increases in zone 4 power. Although that can be a priority and is still a backdrop, we really established that functional threshold power during the base phase. So I'm assuming for most of you that you've completed some form of base training with me. And again, my base training is different than most, so it's not just long, slow miles. I'm looking to build power. Solid functional strength, fast, quick, and effective. Not a lot of time needed to do that. It's going to be hard to do it as far as the work is concerned, but it's really tight. Once that's done, then we begin to diversify. In season, for me, I'll use myself as an example, Ben, and everyone else. I don't look to necessarily continue to escalate my functional threshold power come in season. What I want to do is I want to segment it into smaller pieces and then longer pieces at different intensities. So in this case, the most important thing for racers is twofold. You have to be able to ride what's called your zone 3+, your sweet spot tempo. The ability for you to maintain consistent energy out, a solid energy out for hour after hour after hour. Right? If you want to do crits, if you want to do road races, if you want to do XC races, if you want to do mountain bike epic centers, if you want to do group rides, and the group ride's 60 miles long, 80 miles long, you still got to have zone 3+ endurance built in there. And that's where in-season begins to diversify and spend more time that we didn't spend during the base phase. We use the gains in your strength to make that zone 3+ possible. Zone 3+, or sweet spot, for those of you that don't know, is just slightly below your threshold. And it seems like, well, if it's below my threshold, I can hold it forever. Well, on paper, you can. In reality, go out and try to ride 2.5, 3 hours at zone 3+ just below your threshold the whole time. I guarantee you won't be able to do it, even if you're a fit athlete. The ability to do that over varied terrain is a skill. It's something that takes a lot of practice, a lot of work, and a lot of small nuances in your training that makes that possible. As a racer and group rider, we have to combine that zone 3+ sweet spot with the ability for you to do what? Accelerate, recover, repeat, okay? So here's the platform, the zone 3+, okay? This is the steady state. This is the bread and butter of a good racer. If you don't have this steady state ability at a good power output, then don't bother racing, because you'll constantly be struggling to just stay in the pack. We're talking about getting out of the pack in group rides or races, crits, XCs, or whatever, with the ability for you to escalate your power above that into zone 5 or possibly zone 6. It depends on the type of race. We're talking about VO2 max for short windows of time, and then the ability for you to drop slightly below that line and then back into that line to recover. So we're basically having to train your body to recover at sweet spot and threshold level output. Now again, for most of us, following standard procedures in season and off season, our idea of recovery is soft pedaling. And although soft pedaling with 100 watts out, or your heart rate's really plummeting as you're getting your wind back from a hard effort or a repeat, is great initially, at some point we have to push the envelope to increase the recovery rate, or what we call the repeatability scale. So what makes someone a good group rider or racer isn't just how much power they throw out at threshold. What's the most important, listen to me, is the ability for you to repeat harder and harder efforts with shorter and shorter windows of recovery. In fact, if you ask me, my true definition of fitness, it's not your threshold. I would rather have you have the exact same threshold you started with, but a higher repeatability scale or smaller windows of recovery in between, than have a higher FTP with longer recovery intervals in between. Does that make sense? And the reason why is simple. If we rode in a vacuum, okay, in space, and we only had to apply one effort, one time, and then recover only once, then your highest level power trumps. However, since we're in a cycling environment and mile after mile after mile, you might be at mile 10, mile 20, mile 40, mile 60, mile 80. You catching on here? I have to be able to repeat those scales, much like a musician being able to repeat those scales all the way down the musical notes there, if you will. And that's exactly really how I see cycling, is you have to be able to repeat those notes again and again and again and again. And that's where the in-season protocol really begins to diverge from base training. So once the foundation is laid, now I can begin to pick and choose, okay, you want a log cabin for your framework and you want a traditional colonial house for yours. We both have strong foundations to build on, but we want two different houses. And I'm using analogies here because it hopefully will make your brain begin to comprehend what I'm saying better. Which is, once the foundation is there, which is the same for all of us, racer, beginner, intermediate, advanced, pro, the fundamentals, which is why Cyclo 90 Base and Cyclo 90 Masters are congruent across the boards for all users, is because the fundamentals are the same no matter who you are. And those of you that want to believe that you don't have to do the fundamentals anymore because you're on year 10, year 20 of your riding, I'm on year 30 of my riding. And this year, probably more than ever, going back to my fundamental base has been the most important, and is always the most important thing I do every single year. Because without going back to that fundamental base and connecting it as strong as I can, if I don't do that, if there's a disconnect there, I can't diversify later. So I know come May and June and July when I want to be repeating at my best level efforts, if I didn't do the base work first, it won't happen. Trust me. It won't happen. And if it does, it'll happen for a few days as opposed to a few months, which is what we want. Next question. This one kind of goes more into the century or event level rider, but equally important. Graham, I'm done your Cyclo 90 base. He did not use the Masters. He just used the regular base, which I know many of you are doing as well. Again, still probably my most popular program of all time. I feel great. I want to move to your in-season that I just got last week, but I'm not sure which of your various plans to use. There's 6 plans. 6. In that protocol, 3 for mountain bike, 3 for road. Doesn't sound like very many based on the myriad of different goals, but trust me, we can use them for any goal you've got. Climbing is my weakness, he says, but I'm training for several rides over 100 miles. Should I use the endurance plan or the climbing plan? This is from Alex from Missouri. Alex, use both. Now, when I created the in-season protocol, I created 3 primary agendas per rider for mountain bikers and for roadies. Okay, I know many of you think, well, if I'm not a mountain biker, then I don't need the roadie plans. If I'm a roadie, I don't need the mountain biking plans. Look, to me, being a multi-cyclist, meaning that I do it all. I mean, I cross bike, road bike, randonnée bike, mountain bike, single speed. I love all of them, and I use them all as tools. So there's never a time during the year where I'm not rotating my bikes. I'm always doing that. That doesn't mean you have to, but from a training perspective, to me, the bike is irrelevant. What's relevant is what envelope of our body are we pushing at one particular time. Zone 4, Zone 5, Zone 3 plus, which again is the stationary part that we're always looking to improve the sweet spot of our body. If you're training for something like a century or an event ride, especially if it's a climbing event, and I know many of us do centuries or epic level rides that have 10,000 feet of climbing, 20,000 feet of climbing. I mean, it's just crazy these days that the lure of the event usually nowadays is the climbing. So which priority within your training and your power should you prioritize, the endurance or the climbing? Well, I always say do both. And if you ever use my Cyclo 90 in-season protocols, mountain bike or road, you know that no matter which plan you choose, whether it's the race perform plans, whether it's the climbing plans or the endurance plans, I always have, no matter which plan you choose, work that's going to be done on your threshold, Zone 5 VO2 max, your repeatability, your climbing technique, your Zone 3 plus, your endurance, Zone 3. In every single plan, what differentiates each plan is simple. It's how much weight I put into what parameters. So the race and perform plan, do I have endless amounts of endurance rides? I have a few per week, maybe usually 1 or 2 per week, but I have a much higher predominance of Zone 4 plus, Zone 5 VO2 max repeatability built into that plan. So a higher output predominates that specific plan. In contrast, my endurance plan has less of this Zone 5 plus level output. It's still in there, but it begins to drop in scale as the Zone 3 plus, Zone 4, and more longer endurance fatigue building rides begin to predominate the landscape per week. Does that make sense? So it's not like I put you on an endurance plan and every single workout or ride you do is all based on endurance. Well, hell no. That's a pretty dumb plan if you ask me. If you want to build endurance, you're going to have to diversify, balance, and segment every 7 days to progress that to an endurance peak. And it's what most riders don't do. If it's 5 days a week, 6 days a week, I want to build endurance. So I'm riding 2 hours, I'm riding 3 hours, I'm riding 4 hours. It's not that building time isn't important, But if it's just simply to build time, hoping that time actually builds functional endurance, is a misnomer. To build endurance, I need to basically teach your body to resist fatigue. And we don't need 4-hour rides to do that. I can fatigue you to an endurance level in less than 90 minutes. And if I progress that from day to day or strategically plant those workouts day to day, I can actually build more fatigue over a 2 or 3 day cycle in 1/2 the time as any 5 or 6 hour ride at one time. And this is more practical for most of us because it allows us to focus our energy, focus on 1 or 2 objectives per ride, which I've always said, if you want to make progress, picking 1 or 2 objectives per ride is pivotal. If you pick 20 different objectives per ride or every week, you're not going to accomplish any of them. We want to simplify what we're working on. In relation to his question here, climbing or endurance, well, if you've got enough time, and I'm assuming you do before your event, you didn't mention what event it is, but it's only early March, so I'm assuming, let's say even April or May. If you've got about 6 to 8 weeks, which I've always said, listen to me, if the base is done, you only need a maximum of 8 weeks to peak for any event. And in fact, in general, I still say that for most of us, that's too long. 4 to 6 weeks is really the optimal zone to try to get your body up to snuff for the exact event you're trying to target. So for you, you can rotate between the climbing and the endurance events. Typically, I recommend the climbing plan first. It's a 4-week protocol, 3 weeks of build, 1 week of recovery, and then we move right to the endurance. 3 weeks of build, 1 week of tapering, which is a little bit different than recovery, and then boom, you hit your event. And you should be primed on both your climbing skill and your endurance. And even though we're finishing with the endurance plan, the climbing strength and technique that you've gained from the first round will carry over as I begin to still use. It's not like the endurance plan doesn't have climbing in it, or climbing drills or climbing hit sessions. Of course it does. It's got quite a bit actually. But how I use that climbing for longer durations of time dictates the value of that plan. So to sum up, what I want to say is simple. Gaining functional strength is imperative. It's important. Your core, your FTP power, we want to elongate that power to make it more usable for the everyday cyclist. Again, 8-minute tests are great to begin with. Moving into 20, 30, 40, 60-minute tests, which I have stated again and again, gives you a much better value. Even if the numbers are slightly lower, which I bet they probably will be, compared to your 8-minute approximate test, that's okay. At least it's giving you real-world analysis of what's going on and a better understanding of your true self as a cyclist. Don't dilute yourself. Once that's established, now we pick and choose which diversification of that power we want to segment towards our individual goals. I'm a huge believer that your progress is actually really simple. Give me the fundamentals first. That's a given. I'm blind to it. Here's the Cyclo 90, here's the Cyclo 90 Masters. Get the work done. No excuses. It's 6 hours per week. If you can't do 6 hours per week over 7 days to get stronger, then you shouldn't be riding, or just go ride a Huffy or something. Once that's done, now come to me. Let's look at that in-season protocol. You tell me what your objectives are, and out of those 6 plans, I guarantee you I have a combination of those that will guarantee your success moving forward with that, as long as you're willing to understand that if we remove the crap that doesn't need to be there, the wasted miles, the wasted workouts, well, it's another group ride on Tuesday. I know I just did one last week and one on the weekend and one the week before that. I keep sidetracking my work, the work that you need to do. If you keep doing that, then I can't make any promises. And I see riders do this all the time. Doing well with a plan, making progress, then spring comes, the group rides are there, and they begin to basically fall into whatever pattern the group decides or deems is worthy, not for the individual, but for the group itself, the egocentric part of the group. And although group rides can be great places to test yourself and or have great camaraderie and showing off your fitness or having fun, if it predominates your landscape on building strength for you, you're gonna get shortchanged. I guarantee it every time. And the reason why is if you work on you and the things that you need to work on by yourself, which is the hardest thing to do, by the way, and then you come back into the group, I guarantee that group will be saying, what the hell has this guy and girl been doing? I guarantee it. My friends, I hope these tips and information is helpful. If you start with me, start with Cyclo 90 Base, the original. If you're more advanced, or if you're looking to catch up even faster, Cyclo 90 Masters, which just came out, which is killer. That's what I'm using. I haven't been training very much, but the little training that I have been doing, 3 hours per week, give or take, based on conditions, lack of ability to get out. I'm riding just as strong right now using half of the masters as I was just a year ago, doing almost the full Cyclo 90 base. And that's mostly about decision as opposed to program. The program, is slightly escalated, but the real reason is just simply when I do a workout, I don't mess around. I get right to it, unlike probably this video. My friends, I hope this is helpful. I will talk to you soon. Yes, I'm growing out a bit of a beard here. I've been trapped inside my house, sick. I just don't care. I'll talk to you soon.